The reading of my father's will lasted exactly 17 minutes. I know because I counted every single second. Every tick of that old grandfather clock in the corner of his study sounded like a hammer striking the final nail into something I had spent my whole life trying to build, a place in this family. My name is Preston Thorne, but that last name, it's always come with an asterisk, because in the Thorne family, I was never really one of them. My father, Victor Thorne, built a real estate empire worth $18 million from nothing, or at least that's what Forbes liked to say. To the world, he was a self-made titan, the man who could turn dirt into diamonds, who could take a plot of land and turn it into gold. But to me, he was something else. He was a man who built walls instead of homes. He died 5 days ago, right there at his desk, pen still in hand, signing contracts until his heart just stopped. The man literally worked himself to death, and somehow that felt fitting. His entire life had been one long transaction. Every moment, every decision, every person, all measured in profit and loss, including his children, especially me. That's why when I sat in that wood-paneled study, the air thick with old money and old grudges, I already knew how this was going to go. Attorney Raymond Finch sat across from us, his voice calm, professional, detached. He had the kind of hands that had spent decades sorting through the greed of other people's lives. Steady, deliberate, unshakable. To my left, my oldest brother Garrett, 35 years old, wearing the Rolex he had literally taken off our father's body. To my right, Holden, 32, tapping away on his phone, probably texting his wife about which mansion they'd move into first. And then there was me, the son who shouldn't exist, the reminder of our father's one mistake. Finch started reading. Open quote. The Manhattan properties, including the 3 penthouses on Fifth Avenue and the 2 commercial buildings in Tribeca, valued at $8 million, I leave to my son, Garrett. Close quote. Garrett smirked, already pouring himself another glass of 100-year-old scotch from our father's collection. About time the old man recognized who actually ran New York, he muttered. Finch continued. Open quote. The Hampton estate, the complete yacht collection, including the Celestial Dream, and all vehicles in the Long Island storage facility valued at $7 million, I leave to my son, Holden. Close quote. Holden laughed, an easy, entitled sound. The cars, he said, shaking his head. Miranda's going to lose her mind. There's a 67 Ferrari in there worth $2 million alone. And they just kept going. The art, the stocks, the accounts in Zurich and Geneva, dividing the empire like kids trading Halloween candy. Every few minutes, one of them would glance at me, not with curiosity, but amusement. Waiting. They all knew my name was coming next. The only question was how little it would be. Finally, Finch said it. Open quote, Preston, close quote. My brothers both leaned forward, like vultures catching a scent. Finch reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single brown envelope. It was aged, slightly bent at the corners, and my name was written across it in shaky handwriting, my father's handwriting. Open quote, I leave this envelope, Finch said quietly, to be opened in private, containing what he needs to know. Close quote. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then Garrett started laughing. Hard. The kind of laughter that sounds like breaking glass. He almost choked on his scotch. An envelope? He gasped. 2 years of pretending to play family and Daddy left you a letter? Holden grinned. Maybe it's a thank you card or directions to the nearest employment office. Their laughter filled the room, bouncing off the marble and mahogany like a cruel echo. Finch handed me the envelope. I felt its weight, or lack of it. 28 years of effort, of silence, of obedience, and it weighed less than a credit card bill. Then Finch read one last line from the will, a line my brothers barely noticed. Open quote. Blood may determine birthright, but character determines worth. I trust each of you will receive exactly what you deserve. Close quote. Garrett and Holden were too drunk on victory to care about the strange wording. They were already arguing over who would take father's office at corporate headquarters. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket and stood up. Garrett called after me, smirking. Hey, Preston, if you need a job, I might have an opening in building maintenance. You'd have to start from the basement, but hey, you're used to being beneath us, right? Their laughter followed me through the foyer, past the portraits of Thorne men who'd never acknowledged me, out into the October afternoon, where my 10-year-old Honda sat between their Maseratis like a punchline. Inside that envelope was a bank account number and 11 words that would reveal 25 years of lies. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I was done begging for scraps from their table. I sat in my car, staring at the envelope. My father's dying handwriting stared back at me, and I couldn't tell if it was a message or another punishment. I'd never truly belonged in the Thorne family, and they made damn sure I knew it. My earliest memory isn't of love or laughter. It's of Garrett, 10 years old, standing with his private school friends in the garden, pointing at me. Open quote, "That's Preston," he said. "Dad's mistake from his secretary. We keep him around because Dad feels guilty." Close quote. That was my introduction to belonging. My mother, Diane Rousseau, died when I was 3. A car accident. They said it was a single vehicle crash on the Long Island Expressway. Brake failure. Tragic, simple, clean. But nothing in my family was ever simple. She'd been my father's secretary for 5 years. Their affair produced me, the physical evidence of Victor Thorne's one lapse in judgment. He took me in, but not out of love. No, out of obligation. The Thorne mansion was 32 rooms of cold marble and colder silence. While Garrett and Holden had their names engraved on their bedroom doors, mine just read, "Guest Room 3." At dinner, I sat at the far end of the long dining table, close enough to be seen, far enough to be ignored. Father would ask Garrett about Princeton, Holden about the company, the market, the empire. When he turned to me, it was only to ask, "Do you need anything for school?" The correct answer was always, "No, sir." Holden's cruelty came with a smile. He'd invite me to join him and his friends, only to remind me, publicly, why I didn't belong. Open quote, "Preston can't come to the country club, guys. They have legitimate member requirements." Close quote. Or the classic, open quote, "Let's keep Preston out of the family photos. It'd confuse the investors." Close quote. I learned early that in order to survive, I had to make myself useful. When Garrett needed essays written for college, I wrote them. When Holden crashed the Mercedes, I took the blame. When Father needed someone to pull 18-hour shifts without credit or complaint, I was there. I became fluent in the language of silence, the art of being invisible. And for years, I believed that if I just worked harder, if I gave more, maybe one day Victor Thorne would look at me the way he looked at them. But he never did. At board meetings, I was his special project. At charity galas, I was the young man Victor mentors. Never son, never family. I watched him pose for photos with Garrett and Holden while I stood off camera holding their coats. I listened as he introduced my 2 boys to investors while I stood 3 feet away, unseen. And the cruelest part? I was better than both of them. Garrett and Holden coasted through Ivy League schools on legacy and money, while I clawed my way into MIT on merit. They slept off hangovers during board meetings. I was building my own consulting firm by 25, signing 6-figure clients they could only dream of. But in the Thorne family, success doesn't make you legitimate. Blood does. And to my father, I was a permanent reminder of a mistake he wished he could erase. One night, I asked him why he never treated me like his son. He didn't get angry. He didn't even look at me. He just said, open quote, "You are what you are, Preston. Make peace with it." Close quote. Close quote. So I tried. I built my own life. Small, quiet, independent, a rented apartment in Brooklyn, a girlfriend named Rebecca who never met my family because how could I explain that I belonged to them and not at all? And for a while I convinced myself that was enough, until my father started to get sick. Heart problems, the kind you can't buy your way out of. Garrett and Holden suddenly started showing up at the mansion more often, bringing their wives, pretending to care, circling him like sharks around a bleeding whale. They'd talk openly about their inheritance plans in front of me. Open quote, "What do you think Preston will get?" Miranda, Holden's wife, once asked at dinner. "Whatever it is," Holden replied without hesitation, "it'll be more than he deserves." Close quote. When the call came that father was gone, I wasn't surprised. "Massive heart attack," the secretary said. Found slumped over his desk, pen still in hand. Even in death, he couldn't let go of the paperwork. And maybe that was the part that broke me the most. Not the loss, but the fittingness of it all. He'd lived like a machine and died like one. 5 days later, I was standing in his study, surrounded by the ghosts of everything I was never allowed to have. while my brothers celebrated their victory before the ink was even dry. They had hired caterers before the will was read, champagne glasses already full, the smell of money in the air, heavy and intoxicating. I watched them, my brothers, their wives, their laughter, and realized something I should have understood years ago. I had spent my entire life trying to earn the love of a man who didn't have any to give. Not to them, not to me, not even to himself. When the reading ended, I left without looking back. But as I sat in my car with that envelope resting on my lap, I felt something new, something sharp, quiet, and burning. It wasn't grief, it wasn't anger, it was clarity. For the first time in 28 years, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, a bank account number, and beneath it, 11 words written in shaky pen. Open quote, "The truth you've been denied is buried where it began." Close quote. I stared at those words until they blurred, because I had no idea then. Those 11 words were about to change everything I thought I knew about my father, my mother's death, and what it really meant to be a thorn. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something much, much darker. It was supposed to be just another afternoon inside the Thorn estate. Marble floors, cold air, thick with money and quiet hatred. But that day, the silence wasn't ordinary. It was the kind that comes before a storm, the kind that waits to swallow secrets buried for decades. They were all there. Garrett, Holden, their perfect wives, Miranda and Simone, sipping scotch and pretending grief, pretending they cared about the man whose empire they were about to divide. The great Victor Edmund Thorne, my father, and me, Preston, the forgotten son, the one who never truly belonged. When I walked into that room, Garrett raised his glass like a knife. "Look who decided to show up," he said, smirking. "Come to see how the real heirs inherit?" I said nothing, just found my usual seat in the corner, the one nobody else ever wanted. Holden barely glanced up from his phone, already listing properties online before the will had even been read. "Smart?" he muttered, managing expectations. Though I am curious what Dad came up with for you. My bet's on that broken Rolex he never fixed. Poetic, right? Broken watch for the broken son. Their laughter was light, cruel, familiar. Then the air shifted. The door opened and Raymond Finch walked in, Victor's lawyer. A man who'd been part of this family longer than most of its blood, 30 years in Victor's shadow. If anyone knew where the bodies were buried, it was Finch. "Ladies, gentlemen," he said, voice crisp and even. "Shall we begin?" He set a leather briefcase on the desk, unlatched it with slow precision, and pulled out a folder marked with Victor's seal. The same seal that once hung on the gates of Thorn Industries. The reading began. The first 10 minutes were exactly what everyone expected. Garrett inherited the Manhattan real estate portfolio, $8 million in prime property, generating nearly $1 million a month in rent. He actually whooped when Finch listed the addresses, already drunk on numbers. Holden got the Hampton estate, 3 yachts, and Victor's entire vintage car collection. $7 million in toys for a man who'd never worked an honest day in his life. Simone, his wife, was already texting her friends. Miranda, meanwhile, had yacht club tabs open on her phone, picking dock space in Monaco. Finch read out more. Stock portfolios, offshore accounts, shares in companies even the IRS didn't know existed. Garrett and Holden split millions like candy, each one smiling wider, drunker, richer. And then Finch paused. "Preston." The room went still. Even Garrett stopped laughing. Finch reached into his briefcase again, slower this time. When his hand emerged, it was holding something small, a brown envelope, old and bent at the corners. My name written across it in shaky handwriting. Victor's handwriting. "I leave this envelope?" Finch read, "To be opened in private, containing what he needs to know." For a moment, silence, and then laughter. Garrett threw his head back, nearly spilling his drink. "An envelope? 2 years of groveling for paper?" Simone leaned forward. "Maybe it's a coupon," she said sweetly. 10% off therapy for daddy issues. "Or directions to the nearest homeless shelter," Miranda added, "since he won't be living in the guest house anymore." The laughter burned, but Finch's face didn't move. He simply handed me the envelope, eyes low, jaw tight. It felt weightless in my hands. 28 years in that family, and my entire inheritance didn't even have a pulse. Finch cleared his throat. "There is one final statement," he said. from Victor himself. He adjusted his glasses, read from another page. Blood may determine birthright, but character determines worth. I trust each of you will receive exactly what you deserve. The words hung like smoke. Garrett muttered, sanctimonious to the end. But hey, at least we got millions, and he got stationary. They didn't notice Finch's eyes. The way he hesitated, like he knew something the rest of them didn't. I left without another word. Their laughter followed me through the halls, past the portraits of dead men who'd never claimed me. Outside, my old Honda waited in the driveway like the last piece of my real life. I sat inside for almost an hour, just staring at the envelope. My hands wouldn't open it. Because once I did, it would be over. The mystery, the hope, the last thread of connection to a man who never called me son. But curiosity is stronger than pain. The party had started inside. Shadows danced through the mansion windows. My brothers were celebrating their good fortune. I turned the envelope over in my hands one last time and opened it. One piece of paper, folded once. Victor's handwriting again. Steady this time, like it had been written years ago. Preston, this is for the child who was never supposed to exist. Account number 44478291163, Zurich Liberty Bank. Your mother knew why. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no love, just numbers and a secret. I stared at those words. The child who was never supposed to exist. Even dead, he couldn't resist reminding me I was a mistake. I drove home to Brooklyn, the city lights bleeding through the windshield like ghosts. My laptop sat on the table, still open from the morning. I typed Zurich Liberty Bank. Their website loaded, gold crest, black background, promises of privacy and discretion. I entered the account number. Social Security, mother's maiden name, Russo. Diane Russo, the secretary who'd made the mistake of falling in love with her boss. But before I hit login, I stopped. Victor's note, your mother knew why. Knew why what? Why he hated me, why she died. My mother had died when I was 3. A car accident. Brake failure, they said. Case closed. But something inside me whispered, check. So I did. I searched New York State's accident database. It took minutes that felt like hours. And then I found it. October 15th, 1999. Diane Russo. Single vehicle accident, fatal on impact. But below that, a link. Detailed investigation file. I clicked. The report opened with the officer's notes. My breath froze as I read. Brake line appears to have been deliberately severed. Tool marks consistent with purposeful damage. Recommendation for homicide investigation. And then, investigation terminated at family's request. Authorization attached. The signature, Victor Thorne. My father had ended the investigation into my mother's murder. I grabbed my phone. My fingers shook. Finch answered on the first ring. Preston, he said quietly. I assume you've opened it. What the hell is this, Finch? I shouted. What did Victor know about my mother's death? He was silent for a long time. I could hear him breathing. Then, check the account. Then you'll understand. The truth has been waiting 25 years. Finch, I started, but the line was dead. I sat back, heart pounding. The accident report was still open. So was the Zurich Bank login page. I typed my mother's name. Hit enter. The loading bar crawled across the screen like time itself had slowed down. Then the numbers appeared. At first I thought it was a glitch. A misplaced decimal. I blinked, refreshed the page. Once, twice, a third time. The number didn't change. $127,000. $127 million. Before I could even process what I was seeing, my phone rang again. Unknown number. International code. Mr. Preston, a voice said. Elderly, German accent, calm. My name is Hinrich Ducker. I have been waiting 25 years for you to access this account. I couldn't speak. He continued. It is time you learned the truth about your mother, your father, and the money your brothers just inherited. The room seemed to tilt around me. My pulse was a hammer in my chest. Mr. Ducker, I said slowly. What truth? A pause. The account was not your father's, it was hers. Everything Victor owned, the company, the real estate, the offshore holdings, it all began with her money. Money that was supposed to go to you. I looked back at the screen, at the impossible number glowing in the dark. My mother's name, her legacy. The man on the phone kept talking. Your mother discovered something 25 years ago, something Victor could never allow to surface. He silenced her, but not before she secured this account, protected by codes only her child could unlock. You, I whispered. She knew. Yes, he said. And she left you more than money. The account contains documents, files that can destroy everything the Thorne family built. Murder, fraud, corruption. Your father's empire was built on blood. My mouth went dry. So what now? The line crackled. Now, Mr. Preston, you decide what kind of Thorne you truly are. Then the call ended. The screen flickered, and new folders appeared inside the account dashboard, labeled in Victor's old company code. Project names, bank transfers. One stood out, Russo Core 99. I clicked it. A photo. My mother, smiling, standing beside Victor, pregnant. Behind them a yacht, the same yacht Holden had just inherited. The metadata said it was taken 1 week before her accident. Then another file, a scanned letter in her handwriting. If you're reading this, Preston, it means Victor found out. Do not trust anyone. The account will keep you safe. It will show you what he did, what he really did. I felt the room closing in. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far away, but inside my apartment, everything was silent except for the hum of my laptop. I could see my reflection in the screen, pale, hollow-eyed, trembling. For 28 years, I had been the mistake, the forgotten son, the nothing. But now I was holding the key to everything Victor had ever feared. The wealth, the power, the truth. The phone buzzed again, a text this time. Unknown sender. Stop digging. No name, no number traceable. Then another. You're not safe. My eyes darted to the window. Across the street, a black car idled under the flickering streetlight. The headlights flashed once. I stood frozen, heart in my throat. The screen still glowed behind me. $127 million. Folders of evidence, my mother's voice echoing from the grave, and outside, someone waiting. I didn't know who to trust. Not Finch, not the lawyer, not even Ducker. All I knew was this. Victor Thorne had left me more than a fortune. He'd left me a war, and tonight it was about to begin. This can't be real. The words slipped out before I even knew I was speaking. My voice cracked, half disbelief, half terror, as I stared down at the numbers glowing on my phone screen. I gripped it so tight my knuckles went white, like if I let go, the truth might vanish. $127 million. Sitting in an account under my name. There's been some mistake, I stammered. There is no mistake, Mr. Preston, the voice replied, calm and precise. A soft German accent, every syllable deliberate. This account has been growing for 29 years, waiting for this moment. I froze. 29 years. I was 28. Before I could speak again, Ducker continued. But the money, Mr. Preston, is just the beginning of what you need to understand. I scrolled through the account history, my heartbeat pounding louder with every flick of my thumb. Decades of deposits, regular transfers starting in 1996, 3 years before I was even born. Every transaction stamped with the same sender, Project Prometheus, government serial numbers, federal routing codes. The final deposit, October 15th, 1999, the day my mother died. My mouth went dry. What is this? I whispered. Your mother, Mr. Preston, Ducker said softly, was not who you believed her to be. My hand trembled as I set the phone on the table. Diane Russo was not simply a secretary. She was Special Agent Diane Russo, FBI Financial Crimes Division. She was embedded inside Thorne Industries as part of a 3-year investigation into your father's money laundering operation. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened until the room began to tilt. That's impossible, I muttered. She was just his secretary. They had an affair. The affair was real, Ducker said gently. That was the problem. Agent Russo fell in love with her target. I felt the world collapse inward. You were never supposed to happen. His words hit harder than any bullet. When she became pregnant, he continued, she tried to extract herself from the operation. She wanted to come clean, to tell Victor the truth, to find a way to protect both of you. But Victor found out first. The pieces started clicking together. Horrible, jagged pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to see. He discovered her true identity when you were 2 years old, but by then, something unexpected had happened. Victor had fallen in love with her too. My mind was reeling. And despite everything, he loved you, Mr. Preston. The boy who was never supposed to exist had become the only genuine thing in his world of calculated transactions. I laughed bitterly. If he loved me, he had a funny way of showing it. He kept you at a distance to protect you, Ducker said. Your brothers, Garrett and Holden, they were already being groomed to take over the criminal empire. They were 13 and 10 when your mother died, old enough to be dangerous if they ever learned the truth. If they discovered you were the son of an FBI agent, What do you think they would have done? I already knew the answer before he said it. They killed her, I whispered. Not personally, but yes, Ducker replied, voice heavy. When Garrett found out about your mother's true identity, he told Holden. Together, they hired someone to cut her brake lines. They were just children, but they were Thorn children, raised to see threats and eliminate them. The air left my lungs. Victor discovered what they'd done too late, Ducker went on, and he covered it up. He covered it up? I snapped, anger cutting through the fog. He made a choice, Ducker said quietly. Turn in his sons for murder or protect the only innocent life in the entire equation. You. He paused. So he made a deal with the FBI. My knees almost gave out. Your mother had compiled 3 years of evidence before her death, everything needed to destroy Thorn Industries. Victor agreed to keep running the operation, feeding information to the Bureau from within. In exchange, they would let the Empire stand until his death. That way, you could grow up safe, if not loved. Silence. Only my ragged breathing filled the room. And the money? I asked, my voice barely audible. Your mother started converting evidence into assets, Ducker explained. She sold intelligence, moved funds through ghost accounts, and created financial channels that would take decades to trace. It was her insurance policy. When she died, Victor continued the work, adding to it every year. Every dollar your brothers stole, he matched in your account. Their fortune was built on blood. Yours was built on redemption. I stood up, pacing. Every step echoed like thunder in the tiny apartment. There's more, Ducker said. Check your secure messages in the account. I opened the tab. Hundreds of files appeared. Financial records, photos, recorded conversations, decades of proof. But look at the most recent ones, he added. They're all about Garrett and Holden. I scrolled. The last 5 years were meticulously documented. Murder, extortion, human trafficking. Your brothers have expanded the empire, Ducker said. Your father recorded everything, every deal, every death. He wanted you to have the choice he never did. What choice, I asked, though deep down I already knew. You can walk away with your fortune or deliver justice. The line went quiet. For the first time in my life, I realized what my father's final words truly meant. Character determines worth. He hadn't been mocking me. He'd been warning me. I spent 3 days staring at that account. $127 million and the power to burn my family's legacy to ash. The rational voice inside me screamed to take the money and vanish. Start over. Live. But then I saw my mother's face. The way her smile hid exhaustion. The way her car never made it home that night. And I knew. On the 4th day, I made my decision. I transferred $10 million to a new account, enough to build a life, but not enough to lose myself. The rest, I left untouched. Then I created 2 packages. The first went to the FBI. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence Thorn Industries ever buried. The second went to Raymond Finch, my father's lawyer, with strict instructions. Deliver it to my brothers at exactly 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the same time they'd laughed at my empty envelope during the will reading. Monday night, I booked a one-way flight to Zurich. By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in a Swiss hotel room watching CNN. Federal agents stormed Thorn Industries headquarters. Garrett in handcuffs, face twisted in rage. Holden running through the parking garage before being tackled by armed agents. The news called it the largest financial crime bust in New York history. 3 decades of corruption, undone in a single afternoon. My package to them contained only 1 page, the same stationery Victor had used for my envelope. The message was simple. Character determines worth. Enjoy what you deserve. The child who was never supposed to exist. By nightfall, every asset was frozen. The yachts, the penthouses, the jewelry, all gone. Simone tried to flee to Milan with suitcases of diamonds, caught at customs. Miranda was arrested at the yacht club, still trying to register boats she no longer owned. The Thorn Empire collapsed, and for the first time in its history, it took everyone but me with it. I changed my name, started over. The $10 million I took became seed money for something real. A foundation for children who'd lost parents to violence, kids who'd been collateral damage in someone else's war. 300 families, 300 lives rebuilt. Hinrich Ducker still manages the original account. It's grown, over 200 million now, doubling every decade. Once a year, he calls me. Always the same question, will you claim it this year, Mr. Preston? and I always answer the same way. The child who was never supposed to exist is doing just fine without it. Because I finally understand what Victor gave me. He gave my brothers everything they wanted: power, wealth, legacy, and it destroyed them. He gave me nothing: no love, no recognition, no name, but he gave me freedom. Every cold glance, every cruel word, every moment he reminded me I didn't belong wasn't rejection. It was protection. He made me strong enough to live without his approval because he knew one day I'd have to live without his shield. The real inheritance wasn't the money, or the empire, or even the truth. It was the ability to choose who I would become when everything else was gone. Garrett and Holden never had that choice. They were born into chains, gold-plated but chains nonetheless. Me, I was born out of chaos. And in that chaos, I found freedom. Sometimes late at night, I walk past the banks in Zurich, and I think about that fortune still sitting there, growing quietly in the dark, $200 million, waiting for me. Sometimes I wonder what my life would look like if I claimed it. Then I remember my mother, her last drive, my father's cold eyes that hid something like mercy. And I keep walking because some inheritances are too heavy to carry. Some fortunes cost more than they're worth. And sometimes the greatest wealth is realizing you already have enough. But every year, when Ducker calls, when he asks that same question, there's a moment, just one heartbeat, when I hesitate. Because somewhere deep inside that account lies the ghost of everything I was never meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, one day I'll open it again. Not for the money, but for the truth that still waits to be uncovered. Because in families like mine, the past never stays buried.